Imagine, if you will, packing your bags.
Right. Getting ready for a big trip.
Yeah, exactly. You're traveling across the country with your teenage daughter. And, I mean, this isn't just any road trip.
No, definitely not.
You are heading to her spectacular royal wedding. She is going to marry the nation's greatest war hero, like a celebrity.
An absolute legend of a man.
Right. So you arrive at the military camp where the ceremony is supposed to take place. You can smell the salt in the air. The sea breeze is blowing.
Your chariot pulls up.
Yeah, you step out into the sunlight.
Yeah.
And then, well, you discover there is no wedding.
Not at all. It's just an altar.
It's just wild. The invitation was a complete calculated trap. And the groom, he has absolutely no idea what's going on.
He hasn't even been told about a wedding.
Exactly. And the reality of why you were actually summoned there just drops on you like a physical weight. Your daughter is the required blood sacrifice.
Right, to appease a wrathful goddess.
And the man holding the knife, the man who arranged the entire thing, is her own father.
It is the ultimate betrayal. I mean, you're entirely isolated in a camp of thousands of armed men who want your child dead.
Yeah.
And the architect of that nightmare is the one person who is supposed to protect her.
And that absolute suffocating terror is exactly where we are starting today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we are exploring a masterpiece of ancient Greek tragedy. It's Euripides' play Iphigenia at Aulis, written around 406 BCE.
A truly incredible piece of literature.
It really is. But we're doing something a little different with it today. We aren't just looking at the ancient play as a piece of theater.
Right, we're bringing in another perspective.
Yeah, we are pairing the text of the play with a really fascinating, rigorous, scholarly analysis. And this analysis is written from a conservative evangelical perspective.
So throughout this conversation, we'll be looking at the text through that specific theological lens.
Which creates this really fascinating dialogue, between the classic literature on one hand and a very precise exegetical theology on the other.
It's basically reading ancient Athens through the lens of ancient Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And ultimately the early Christian church.
And our mission for you, the listener, is very specific today. We aren't just going to recap a 2,400-year-old play.
That would be a bit dry.
Right. We are going to look at how this ancient, deeply pagan story of a desperate king and a doomed princess can unexpectedly deepen your Christian faith.
It sounds counterintuitive, but it's really powerful.
It is. We want to see how this terrifying story of bloodlust and appeasement illuminates humanity's desperate need for redemption.
And ultimately how our sources suggest it can inspire you to love Christ more deeply.
Exactly, and live for him more fully in your daily life.
To get to that inspiration, though, we first have to understand the darkness of the story.
Yeah, we have to set the stage.
Because while Iphigenia at Aulis is a fictional tragedy, the analysis points out that it perfectly encapsulates the terror of the ancient pagan worldview.
It's a really bleak picture.
It is. When you read this play, you are stepping into a universe governed by transactional, capricious gods.
Gods who are just constantly demanding things.
Right, gods who demand that you pay for their favor, and the currency they demand is human life.
Wow.
Establishing that baseline of terror is essential. It sets up the ultimate contrast with the biblical worldview that the theological analysis will unpack for us later.
I want to spend some time painting the picture of this setting because the backdrop of the play is a literal powder keg.
Oh, absolutely.
The play is set at Aulis, and this isn't just a scenic beach. It's a stagnant, windless harbor.
The massive Greek fleet is just stuck there.
Right. We're talking 1,000 ships, tens of thousands of armed soldiers. They are trying to sail to Troy to fight the Trojan War to get Helen back.
But the winds have completely died.
The sea is like glass. They're totally stranded.
And we have to think about the psychology of that. I mean, in the ancient world, a stranded army quickly becomes a starving army.
And a starving army becomes a mutinous mob.
Exactly. The tension isn't just that they can't go fight. It's that this massive war machine is sitting idle, eating through its supplies, and looking for someone to blame.
The boredom is literally mutating into violence. So the Greek commander-in-chief, King Agamemnon, consults the army's seer.
A man named Calchas.
Right, Calchas. And he drops a total bombshell prophecy. He reveals that Agamemnon has deeply offended the goddess Artemis.
And the reason is almost absurd.
It is. Agamemnon killed a sacred deer in her grove and boasted about his hunting skills.
So she stops the wind.
Yeah, Artemis is so petty, so disproportionately angry about this deer that she grounds the entire fleet. And the prophecy states that the only way to get the winds blowing again is a sacrifice.
But not just any sacrifice.
No, Agamemnon has to sacrifice his eldest daughter, Iphigenia, on Artemis's altar.
It's just horrific. And to understand the theological weight of the analysis we are looking at, we first have to dive into the sheer human cowardice at the heart of this story.
Because Agamemnon doesn't just, grab his daughter in a fit of religious zeal.
No, he uses cold, calculated deceit. The source text really emphasizes this. He sends a letter to his wife, Clytemnestra, back home.
Back in their palace at Argos.
Right. And he tells her to pack up Iphigenia and bring her to the military camp. He claims he has arranged a spectacular marriage for her with Achilles.
Who is, the greatest of all the Greek warriors.
Exactly, the ultimate catch.
It's so deeply cynical. He weaponizes the most joyful occasion imaginable as the bait for a slaughter.
But Euripides is a master of psychology. The play actually opens in the middle of the night, long before the family arrives.
Agamemnon is in his tent, and he is just agonizing.
Our source text highlights his crippling indecision here. He wrote that first letter, sent it off. But now the paternal guilt is eating him alive.
So under the cover of darkness, he's frantically writing a second letter.
Trying to cancel the first one.
Yeah, he seals it, breaks the seal, cries, throws it on the ground, picks it up again.
He is a man completely torn apart by the collision of his political ambition and his role as a father.
He finally gives this second letter to an old trusted servant, right?
Yeah, he tells him to ride as fast as he can into the night to intercept them. To tell them the wedding is off and they must go back home.
I was trying to think of a modern equivalent for this. It's not just trying to unsend an embarrassing text message.
No, the stakes are way higher.
It's more like a CEO who has secretly sold out his entire company to a ruthless private equity firm just to save his own job.
That's a great analogy.
And at the 11th hour, he realizes the human cost and tries to shred the contracts before the board finds out. He's panicking because he knows the machinery he set in motion is about to crush his own family.
But his attempt to stop it fails. The old servant is intercepted on the road by Agamemnon's own brother, Menelaus.
And Menelaus is the one whose wife, Helen, was taken to Troy, so he desperately wants this war.
Right. He violently wrestles the letter away from the old man, breaks the seal, reads it, and confronts Agamemnon.
And this confrontation between the two brothers, it's intense.
It's a masterclass in exposing the cowardly nature of worldly leadership, which is a major theme the theological analysis zeroes in on.
What does Menelaus actually say to him?
He essentially accuses Agamemnon of being a populist hypocrite. He says, you campaigned for this command, you were shaking everyone's hands, desperate for power.
Yeah, smiling at every common soldier.
Exactly. And now that maintaining that power requires a hard, brutal choice, you're backing out.
I'm struggling with this part of the dynamic, though. Agamemnon is the commander-in-chief.
He is.
He holds the literal scepter of power. He's the king of Mycenae. It seems insane to me that he can't just order the army to stand down.
You'd think he could.
Can't he just tell Menelaus to take a hike, declare the war canceled, and tell the army to pack up their tents and go home? What is actually holding him hostage here?
That is the exact paradox the conservative evangelical source explores when critiquing worldly leadership. Agamemnon has the title of king, but he has surrendered the authority to the mob.
He's terrified of his own men.
He is terrified. He tells Menelaus that even if he tries to stop the sacrifice, the Theocalcus, or the famously manipulative politician Odysseus, will just stand up and tell the army.
They'll just leak the prophecy.
Right. They'll whip the troops into an absolute frenzy. Agamemnon genuinely believes that if he cancels a sacrifice, the army will mutiny.
Wow.
They'll march to his home city of Argos, slaughter his whole family anyway, and raze his city to the ground.
So the man who is supposed to be leading the army is entirely led by their bloodlust. He's a captive to their potential outrage.
Precisely. The analysis highlights this as a profound critique of mob-driven leaders.
Hmm.
Agamemnon is a leader who fears man more than he fears doing evil.
And the source connects this to the Bible, right?
Yes. From the biblical perspective the analysis applies, this is a direct, glaring parallel to the condemnation of sinful, cowardly kings in the Scriptures.
Like who?
Think of King Saul in the Old Testament. Saul constantly compromised his obedience to God, constantly offered illicit sacrifices because he was watching the troops scatter.
He was terrified of what the people would do if he didn't appease them.
Exactly. Agamemnon is paralyzed by the exact same fear of losing his position and his life.
And the tragedy just accelerates from there, because right in the middle of this bitter argument between the brothers, a messenger arrives.
With the most horrific timing imaginable.
Truly. He announces, "Hey, great news, King. Your wife and daughter have arrived.
The trap has officially snapped shut.
Yeah. Clytemnestra and Iphigenia pull up in their chariot. Iphigenia is so excited she runs up and throws her arms around her father's neck.
That's heartbreaking.
And Agamemnon has to stand there, physically embracing his little girl, knowing he is the one who invited her there to slit her throat.
The dramatic irony in this scene is almost unbearable to read. I mean, every single word they exchange has a double meaning.
Right.
Iphigenia says, "It's a long voyage you are bound on, father, after you leave me." And Agamemnon replies, "You too have a voyage to make to a haven where you will remember your father."
Ugh. She thinks he means she is traveling to a new home in marriage.
But he means she is traveling to Hades.
It's chilling. And the lie unravels incredibly fast, purely by accident. Clytemnestra happens to bump into Achilles outside the command tent.
She warmly greets him as her future son-in-law.
And Achilles is completely baffled. He says, "Lady, I have never wooed your daughter, and Agamemnon never mentioned a marriage to me."
He has no idea.
And the old servant, the one who tried to deliver the second letter, sees that the jig is up and finally spills the beans. He tells them everything.
The wedding is a sham. It's an altar of human sacrifice.
This brings us to another critical point in the analysis, right? The failure of human honor.
Yes, the absolute failure of human honor to fix a structurally broken, fallen system. Because Achilles is furious.
Naturally.
Not just because of the impending murder of an innocent girl, but because his name, his pristine reputation, was used without his permission.
To lure her to her death.
Right. He is the ultimate proud warrior. He vows to protect Iphigenia. He promises Clytemnestra that no one will lay a single finger on her.
He draws his sword and basically says he will defend her against the entire Greek army if he has to.
But wait, I mean, Achilles is essentially a demigod in this mythology. He's the greatest fighter alive. If anyone can stop this, it's him.
You would really think so.
But his individual honor is utterly futile against the systemic demand for blood. When Achilles returns to the stage later in the play, he is battered.
Oh, wow.
He has to admit that his own men, the Myrmidons, his elite personal guard, they turned against him.
His own men.
Yeah. When he tried to stop the sacrifice, they nearly stoned him to death.
Mm-hmm.
The mob mentality is absolute.
So the demand for appeasement cannot be stopped by a single honorable sword.
Exactly. The system itself is rigged toward death.
Taking a step back, what does this all mean for you, the listener, right now? Because we're not just doing a book club here.
No, not at all.
The theological analysis connects this deeply to a Christian understanding of the world. This play illustrates what the world looks like when it is dominated by coerced appeasement.
It paints a picture of a society governed by worldly power politics, manipulation, and the terrifying vulnerability of the innocent.
When you watch this play, it is designed to make you feel the suffocating weight of a reality without a just, loving, and intervening God.
It's a world where you are always one angry mob or one capricious petty deity away from total destruction.
It creates a deep existential exhaustion.
It really does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we are moving from the abject failures of the men in the play.
The cowardly king who bows to the mob.
Right, and the manipulative politicians driving the mob and the ineffectual hero who is crushed by the mob. We move from them to the astonishing reaction of the victim herself.
Iphigenia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because her reaction forms the crucial, load-bearing bridge to the biblical parallels the analysis explores.
But she doesn't start out brave. I mean, when she first realizes what is happening, she doesn't go quietly into the night.
No, she is terrified, as any child would be.
She falls at Agamemnon's knees. She even picks up her baby brother, Orestes, holding this infant up as a prop to literally beg for her life.
He is so desperate.
The text gives her this incredibly poignant, raw plea. She says to her father, "To gaze upon yon light is man's most cherished gift."
That life below is nothingness.
Right. And whoso longs for death is mad. Better live a life of woe than die a death of glory.
She is expressing the most fundamental human desire to simply exist. She is exposing the absolute emptiness of the glory the men are chasing.
They want to burn down a city for pride.
And she just wants to see the sun tomorrow.
But then Euripides does something wild. There's a sudden, shocking narrative pivot.
Achilles returns, beaten, saying the mob is closing in.
Odysseus is literally on his way to drag her away by her hair.
And Achilles is saying he will fight them all, but it's clear he will be killed. And her mother will likely be trampled or killed in the riot.
And suddenly, Iphigenia stops weeping. The panic just vanishes.
She turns to her mother and says, "Mother, hear me. I am resolved to die, and this I fain would do with honor."
She declares, "I give my body to Hellas. sacrifice it, and make an utter end of Troy.
It is a massive shift in the emotional architecture of the play.
I really need to understand the mechanics of this shift. Why did Euripides write it this way?
It's a great question.
Is she just giving up because she's cornered? Is it a sort of ancient Stockholm syndrome where she embraces her victimhood because she has no other choice?
This is exactly where the scholarly analysis identifies Euripides' major thematic innovation, and it's brilliant.
Okay, how so?
If you look at earlier Greek myths, like Aeschylus's version of the story written decades earlier, Iphigenia is literally gagged so she can't curse her father.
Oh, that's brutal.
And she is hoisted over the altar like a goat. She is a pure, helpless object of violence. But Euripides gives her agency.
Ah, agency.
Yes. She looks at the impossible, horrific situation, the mob, the inevitability of her death, the danger to her mother and Achilles, and she makes a choice.
She turns a coerced, inevitable slaughter into a voluntary self-sacrifice.
For the communal glory of her people. She decides to own her death so that others might conquer.
And the theological analysis we're looking at goes incredibly deep into the actual Greek text to prove this shift in agency, right?
It does. It's not just a thematic interpretation. It's baked into the grammar.
Let's walk the listener through how that works, because this is fascinating.
Yes. The analysis applies a precise linguistic tool called discourse analysis. It looks at the specific verbs Iphigenia uses before and after her pivot.
Okay, what do we see before the pivot?
When she is begging for her life, holding the baby, her monologues are filled with what Greek grammarians call the imperfect tense.
How does that tense function mechanically?
The imperfect tense conveys an ongoing, unresolved, continuous state of action in the past.
So like happening over a period of time.
Exactly. If we were to translate the feeling of it into English, it's the difference between saying I wept and I was weeping.
Okay, I see.
Her language is durative. I was begging, I was crying, the sorrow was washing over me. It paints a picture of a victim caught in an ongoing wave of suffering she cannot control.
But when she makes her pivot, when she realizes she must die, the grammar completely changes.
She stops using the imperfect tense.
She shifts to using perfective or aorist verbs, right?
Yes. In Greek grammar, and the analysis specifically uses the framework of modern linguists here, the aorist tense is used to highlight punctiliar, decisive, completed action.
So it's like a single finalized point in time.
Exactly. It brings the action to the absolute foreground of the narrative. It's the linguistic equivalent of a character stepping out of the chaotic background directly into a sharp spotlight.
Her language goes from the ongoing I am suffering to the sharp, final I give my body, I choose to die.
The grammar itself underscores her voluntary agency. She refuses to be a passive victim of the imperfect tense. She becomes the decisive actor of the aorist tense.
Okay, so we have a young, innocent person willingly offering their life, stepping into the spotlight of decisive action to save their people and appease a demand for blood.
It's a very striking image.
If you are a Christian listener, your theological alarm bells are probably ringing off the hook right now, because Iphigenia's voluntary sacrifice sounds incredibly, almost uncomfortably familiar.
To the story of Jesus.
Yes. But the scholarly analysis insists that before we leap straight to the New Testament and the cross, we have to look at how the Old Testament handles this exact scenario.
Because the Bible deals with this exact trope first.
It does. And because the parallels in the ancient world are striking, the biblical response is radically, intentionally different.
To understand this, the analysis first paints the cultural backdrop of the ancient Near East.
The world in which the Old Testament was written and first read.
Right. Child sacrifice to appease wrathful deities during a military crisis was not just a myth invented for a stage play in Athens.
It was real.
It was a real, terrifying, and widely accepted part of the ancient Mediterranean worldview.
This is crucial context. The analysis mentions the Moabite Mesha stele, which is a real archaeological artifact you can go see.
Yes, and it corroborates a story told in the Bible in 2 Kings chapter 3.
There is a Moabite king named Mesha, and he is losing a devastating siege battle against the combined armies of Israel and Judah.
His city is surrounded, the walls are crumbling.
In a desperate move to get his god, Chemosh, to grant him a military victory, he takes his eldest son, the crown prince,
and sacrifices him publicly on the city wall in full view of both armies.
Wait, he sacrificed his kid on the wall? And the horrifying thing is it actually worked, right?
Psychologically, yeah. The text says a great wrath came upon Israel, and they were so psychologically horrified and demoralized by this extreme act of devotion to Chemosh that they broke off the siege and retreated.
This idea that you could buy military deliverance with the blood of your child was the air these ancient cultures breathed.
So when an ancient reader, steeped in that culture, turns to the Old Testament, they immediately encounter a story in Genesis 22.
A story that shares immense, almost uncomfortable structural similarities with the pagan myths, like Iphigenia at Aulis.
You're talking about the story known as the Akedah, the binding of Isaac.
Yeah, the parallels are wild when you stack them up. In both stories, you have a father who is the paramount leader of his people.
He receives a direct, unambiguous command from a deity to sacrifice his beloved, promised child on an altar.
This sacrifice is intrinsically tied to a future national blessing. For Agamemnon, it's conquering Troy.
For Abraham, it's becoming a great nation.
You have an agonizing multi-day journey to the specific place of sacrifice. You have a heart-wrenching emotional confrontation between the parent and the obedient child.
And then at the very last possible second, as the knife is raised, there is divine intervention.
And an animal is substituted for the child. A ram caught in the thicket for Isaac, and, as we'll see at the end of the play, a deer for Iphigenia.
The structural echoes are undeniably strong. And there is another parallel the analysis notes later in the Old Testament.
The story of Jephthah's daughter in Judges 11.
Right. Jephthah is a military leader who makes a rash pagan-style vow to God, promising to sacrifice whatever comes out of his house first if God grants him victory in battle.
His virgin daughter comes out to greet him with tambourines.
And astonishingly, she willingly submits to the vow, asking only for 2 months to mourn her virginity in the mountains.
It shares the exact tragic motif of a leader's ambition costing his daughter's life, complete with the motif of communal female lamentation.
It really does.
But I really have to push back here on behalf of the listener trying to make sense of their Bible. If the whole point of the biblical worldview is that it condemns human sacrifice,
Which the prophets do, constantly and violently.
exactly, then why on earth does Yahweh ask Abraham to do exactly what the petty pagan goddess Artemis asked of Agamemnon?
It's the big question.
If God hates this, why did he write the exact same script for Abraham? How does a conservative evangelical analysis reconcile this glaring similarity without just waving it away?
That is the absolute crux of the matter. And the analysis unpacks the profound theological difference by looking closely at the motive, the text, and the fundamental nature of the deity involved.
Okay, where does it start?
It goes back to the original Greek of the Septuagint. That's the ancient Greek translation of the Old Testament used by the early church.
Right.
In Genesis 22, the text explicitly states right at the beginning that God tested Abraham. The Greek word used is parazo.
Parazo.
The exegetical analysis is very careful to explain how this word functions mechanically. In this context, parazo means a covenant-proving assay.
An assay.
Yes, it is a test to reveal the quality of something. It is emphatically not tempting someone to commit a sin, nor is it a demand for a bribe.
Right, like a metallurgist testing the purity of gold in a fire. The fire doesn't create the gold, it proves it's really gold.
Exactly. But contrast this with Artemis at Aulis. Artemis is not testing Agamemnon's faith.
Not at all.
Artemis demands innocent blood simply because Agamemnon shot her favorite deer and bruised her ego. It is petty, capricious wrath.
It is a transactional fine. You took a life from my forest, I take a life from your family.
Yahweh's actions with Abraham, on the other hand, are driven by covenantal love. God had already promised to bless the entire world through Isaac's lineage.
The test is whether Abraham trusts the promise maker more than the promised child.
And the most important difference, the one that shatters the pagan parallel completely, is the ending.
Yes. The Old Testament fundamentally subverts the pagan worldview because Yahweh explicitly and dramatically rejects the human sacrifice.
When Abraham raises the knife, God's angel screams at him to stop.
God stops the violence and provides the substitute himself.
Artemis demands that humans provide the blood to appease her anger. Yahweh provides the ram to spare the human.
The biblical God is demonstrating that he is fundamentally different from the capricious gods of the surrounding nations. He does not need human blood to be appeased.
And the analysis points out that the rest of the Old Testament is incredibly, brutally clear on this boundary.
The prophets strictly condemn ancient Near Eastern practices, like worshiping the god Moloch by passing children through the fire.
The prophets call it demonic idolatry. It's listed as a supreme abomination in Leviticus and Deuteronomy.
God says through the prophet Jeremiah, I did not command it, nor did it enter my mind.
So the story of Isaac isn't God saying, I secretly want human sacrifice.
It's God definitively saying to a culture steeped in it, I am the God who stops human sacrifice. I provide the substitute. You do not buy my favor with your children.
And having established that the Old Testament draws strict, non-negotiable boundaries against human sacrifice, our theological analysis then takes us to the next logical step.
It connects Iphigenia's voluntary choice to its ultimate perfect fulfillment in the New Testament.
So we've moved from the pagan terror of Aulis, where the gods demand blood,
Through the strict boundaries of the Old Testament, where God stops the shedding of innocent blood.
and now we arrive at the cross.
The scholarly text views Iphigenia's voluntary heroism as a shadow or a typological foreshadowing of Christ.
They both involve an innocent life, given for communal redemption.
They both involve someone stepping up when the system fails. But the differences, the mechanics of how they sacrifice themselves, are where the theological gold is buried.
The analysis takes us on a deep dive into the Greek exegesis of the New Testament to show how Christ's sacrifice is infinitely superior in its nature.
Let's look at the concept of voluntary action again.
In the Gospel of John, there is a specific, repeated idiom used, "tithemi-psychen," which translates to lay down one's life.
We see this prominently in John 15:13. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends.
And again in 1 John 3:16. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us.
But wait, how does that contrast with Iphigenia? I mean, she used that decisive aorist tense. She stepped into the spotlight. She said she was willing.
She did, but we have to look at the mechanism of why she became willing.
Okay.
Iphigenia was ultimately forced into a corner. She was surrounded by an armed mob of thousands of men demanding her death.
She chose to embrace her inevitable death honorably, rather than being dragged crying. But she didn't initiate it. She couldn't walk away.
Christ's sacrifice, according to the Johannine texts, is purely foundationally voluntary. He says in John 10, "No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord."
I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again.
Furthermore, his sacrifice is driven by agape, which the analysis defines not just as affection, but as a truth-revealing, self-giving, covenantal love.
Iphigenia's motive ultimately was nationalistic pride and the pursuit of earthly glory.
That distinction is so clarifying. Iphigenia made the best of a lethal trap. Jesus built the altar himself out of love.
And the linguistic analysis here brings back that aorist tense we talked about earlier.
Just like Euripides used the aorist tense to show Iphigenia's decisive action against the backdrop of her weeping, the biblical Greek uses the aorist tense to highlight Christ's decisive, completed action of laying down his life.
It stands out brilliantly against the background of human reluctance, which is a crucial point.
The analysis draws a fascinating parallel to Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane in Matthew 26.
Jesus is praying in agony, sweating drops like blood. He prays, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me."
That prayer deeply mirrors Iphigenia's initial, perfectly natural human fear of death, when she said to gaze upon yon light is man's most cherished gift.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because sometimes we sanitize Jesus' sacrifice. We act like he was a robot who felt no fear.
But Gethsemane shows he felt the absolute crushing weight of that human reality. He wanted to live. He felt the terror of the dark.
He felt it entirely, but the mechanism of his submission is completely different.
Jesus' submission, yet not as I will, but as you will, is grounded in perfect Trinitarian submission and love.
He isn't yielding to a bloodthirsty mob like Agamemnon did. He isn't bowing to systemic pressure like Iphigenia did.
It is a completely uncoerced choice made in perfect unity with the Father to redeem humanity.
Let me try to synthesize this with an analogy. Think about the scope of what they bought with their blood. Iphigenia gave her life to buy a temporary breeze, a literal meteorological change in the weather so that an army of angry men could sail across the sea.
Murder another city's inhabitants and cause more death and sorrow.
It was a tragic trade for earthly glory, what the Greeks called kleos.
Christ, on the other hand, gave his life to defeat the very concept of death itself. He bought eternal life.
It's the difference between applying a tiny bloody band-aid to a gaping wound so a soldier can go back into the meat grinder of battle,
Versus performing a total, miraculous resurrection of the body so the soldier never has to fight again.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize the difference in scope and efficacy.
And the analysis brings in another crucial Greek word from the book of Hebrews to emphasize this finality. Hapax, which means once for all.
Iphigenia's sacrifice didn't end war. It didn't stop men from dying. The Trojan War lasted 10 more brutal years.
But Christ's Hapax sacrifice was final. It was structurally sufficient to atone for sin forever.
As Hebrews 10 argues, by that one single offering he has made perfect forever those who are being made holy.
The system is finished. No more altars, no more blood.
Which brings us back to the strange ending of the play. There is a messenger speech at the very end of Iphigenia at Aulis.
Just as the priest is bringing the knife down on Iphigenia's neck, there is a miraculous blinding sound.
Iphigenia completely vanishes into thin air, and a deer is left gasping and bleeding on the altar in her place.
Now, classicists debate if Euripides actually wrote this ending or if another playwright added it later to soften the blow.
But regardless, the substitution motif is right there in the text. Artemis spirits her away and puts an animal in her place.
But compare that substitution motif to the mechanics of Christ's sacrifice. In the Christian gospel, Christ is not the one spirited away while an animal takes the blow.
Christ is both the high priest officiating the sacrifice, and he is the substitute lamb taking the blow for us.
And the sociological result is radically different. Artemis's demand for a substitute ruptured a family. It permanently turned a husband against his wife.
Clytemnestra goes home and eventually murders Agamemnon in his bathtub for this. It turns a father against his daughter.
Christ's sacrifice, according to epistles like Ephesians, actually restores families. It breaks down the dividing wall of hostility and brings fractured, hostile people into the unified household of God.
Okay, we have been incredibly deep in the theological weeds. We've explored Greek tenses, ancient Near Eastern history, and complex biblical typologies.
But the stated mission of this deep dive was to figure out how this actually matters to you, the listener, right now.
How does knowing the difference between the imperfect and aorist tense, or the tragedy of Agamemnon, actually deepen your faith on a Tuesday morning while you're commuting to work?
This is where the application of the analysis becomes intensely practical and deeply diagnostic.
Okay, let's hear it.
The conservative evangelical source uses the biblical worldview to essentially diagnose the play's tragedy as a symptom of a fallen world.
When you strip away the ancient Greek costumes, the armor, and the mythological names, Iphigenia at Aulis perfectly captures what human life feels like without the gospel.
What do you mean by that? How does a play about sacrificing a princess feel like my life today?
Because without the gospel, life feels like a frantic, desperate scramble to appease angry forces.
Now, you might not believe in Artemis or Zeus. You aren't worried about the wind stopping.
But you might feel that you are constantly trying to appease the expectations of a secular culture or a demanding boss or a toxic family dynamic.
Or, perhaps most terrifyingly, a punishing, hypercritical voice inside your own head that tells you you aren't enough.
The underlying pagan worldview is that you are only as good as your last sacrifice. You always have to pay.
You always have to bleed a little bit more to earn favor, to keep your status, or to avoid wrath.
Yes, that hits incredibly close to home. You have to sacrifice your physical health to get the promotion so your boss will favor you.
You have to sacrifice your emotional boundaries for your family's approval so you aren't ostracized. It's a transactional worldview.
Every relationship is a negotiation of appeasement, and it is spiritually exhausting. We are all Agamemnon, terrified of the mob, and willing to sacrifice the things we love to appease it.
So what is the cure?
The gospel is the cure. Because of Christ's hapax, his once-for-all definitive, unrepeatable sacrifice, you do not need to constantly bleed to earn God's favor or appease his wrath.
The transactional worldview of Aulis is dead. It died permanently on the cross.
The Christian God is not a capricious deity sitting in the clouds waiting for you to mess up so he can demand a pound of flesh.
He's the God who looked at your unpayable debt, stepped in front of the mob, and paid it himself.
So what does this mean for how you live today? It completely shifts the structural motivation of your life from fear to grace.
When you realize that you serve a God who provides the sacrifice, rather than a God who demands your destruction, it changes everything.
It inspires a profound, uncoerced love for Christ. You don't obey God because you are terrified he will stop the wind in your life or curse your crops.
You obey him because he already weathered the storm for you.
And bringing it full circle back to Iphigenia and 1 John 3:16, experiencing that grace frees you to genuinely lay down your life for others.
But you don't do it out of tragic, coerced necessity. You don't do it because you are the victim of a mob.
You do it out of an overflowing agape love. You can freely sacrifice your time, your resources, your comfort for your neighbor.
Precisely because you know that your ultimate standing with God is completely, permanently secure. You are operating from a place of finished victory, not a place of desperate appeasement.
Let's take a breath and look back at the immense journey we've taken today. We started on the windswept, terrified, stagnant beaches of Aulis.
We watched a cowardly king betray his own child out of a pathetic fear of the mob.
We saw a young woman, bravely but tragically, lay down her life to buy a temporary victory for a fundamentally broken system.
And then, guided by this rigorous theological exegesis, we traced those shadows through the Old Testament, seeing the God of Abraham draw a hard, definitive line against human sacrifice.
And finally, we arrived at the supreme, voluntary, once-for-all sacrifice of Christ, the sacrifice that permanently shutters the business of earthly altars.
It is a stunning, beautiful trajectory. And I want to leave the listener with a final provocative thought, which is drawn from the missiological approach of the analysis we've been using.
It references Acts chapter 17.
Yes. In Acts 17, the Apostle Paul is speaking to the Greek philosophers in Athens. He doesn't just condemn them, he references their own poets and points to an altar they had built to an unknown god.
Right. He uses their own cultural longing to introduce them to Christ.
Exactly. And this raises a beautiful, lingering question. What if the ancient Greeks, in writing heartbreaking, brilliant plays like Iphigenia at Aulis, were unknowingly expressing a deep, God-given intuition?
What if humanity's innate, universal recognition that our world is fundamentally broken and that a pure, voluntary sacrifice is somehow required to heal it was exactly what prepared the ancient mind?
And what prepares our own hearts today?
To finally recognize and accept the true gospel when it arrives. They felt the shape of the lock in the dark. Christ is the key that finally turned.
That is an incredible thought to end on. They knew they desperately needed a savior, they just didn't know his name yet.
Think about that the next time you feel the immense, crushing pressure to sacrifice pieces of yourself to appease the world around you. You don't have to show up to that fake wedding.
The altar is empty. The price has been permanently paid.
We encourage you to take a fresh look at the ultimate sacrifice that bought your freedom. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.